from about 15 years on up, a great deal of my thoughts were basically unshareable.
We are all evil in some form or another. Are we not? Yes, I am evil. Not 100%, but I am evil.
My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother.
This is Serial Killing, a podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Serial Killing, a Podcast's October extravaganza. This month I have released a few extra podcasts. Some have included our most beloved horror villains and some killer moms and some storytelling. If you've enjoyed these for October, like, subscribe, consider sponsoring, everything helps. So our next October extravaganza podcast will be on the legend of Krampus or Krampus, depending on where you live. This one's going to be a bit shorter, but I think you'll enjoy. If you do a simple Google search, you will find all manner of creatures, but the commonality when it comes to Krampus is his giant horns that curl up from his head. He is displaying his half-goat, half-demon lineage. He has large, pointed ears. He has very large, sharp, and pointy teeth and a very long red tongue. He displays a kind of wretched, mangled, deranged face with bloodshot eyes, and his body is covered in thick black or kind of a dark brown fur, and he has the legs of a goat. Now, there are some images that show him with long white hair and a white beard. And truthfully, throughout all of human existence, there have been horned deities. So where does Krampus come from? Some say he is the son of Hel, who is Loki's daughter, if you don't follow the Marvel movies, and also the Norse goddess of the underworld, making him Loki's grandson. But of course, this can't really be proven true. Others say that he can be tied to the Yule goat, which was a figure of pagan Norse traditions dating far back before Christianity to mark the winter solstice. Just like Krampus, the Yule goat had a rather hideous appearance and terrified children into being good little boys and girls during the Yuletide traditions. It was, and still is, a Scandinavian and Northern European Yule and Christmas symbol and tradition, with its origins from Germanic pagan festivals. The goat itself is said to be connected to the worship of the Norse god Thor. Now, one thing is very clear. Krampus, before Christians absorbed him into their traditions, had literally nothing to do with any of that, save he was celebrated during the winter. But it is hard to say exactly where he began, because most of the Norse mythology and beginnings were indeed absorbed and reconstructed by Christianity. Another old tradition, as far as Krampus's backstory goes, was told by the Grimm brothers and begins with Perchta, the winter goddess. Her name mostly means, quote, the bright one, but is also thought to mean hidden or covered. She is identified as stemming from the same Germanic goddess as Hulda and other German folklore female figures. She is an amalgamation of both good and evil. She was known to visit the homes of children, and if they were good, she'd leave a shiny new coin in their shoe. But if they were naughty children, she cut open their stomachs and took out their entrails, filling the hole with small rocks and straw. The same fate would fall upon anyone who ate anything other than meat, fish, or gruel during the time of her festival. She would either appear as a beautiful and youthful young woman in white, or she would appear as a terrifying white-haired old witch. the description of evil Perkta also visually resembled very closely to what we know as Krampus today. So again, with the eventual spread of Christianity through Germany and Austria with their love of, quote, Old Man Winter, Krampus became associated with Christmas, despite efforts by the Catholic Church to ban him. Now, during the 12th century, the Catholic Church attempted to banish Krampus celebrations because of his resemblance to what they think of as the devil. And, it's pretty well established that the Christians took the pagan likeness of Krampus and used it to represent their devil. They then used that likeness to tell pagans that they were in fact worshiping Satan. So, there's that. And this brings us to Saint Nicholas of Myra, who was a real person sainted around 300 AD. Nicholas was a bishop living in what is now Turkey. He was of Greek descent, and because of the many miracles that he was said to have achieved, he's also known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker. He is the patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, sex workers, children, brewers, unmarried people, and students. And of course, he has the legendary habit of secret gift giving, thus giving rise to the current traditional Santa Claus, aka Saint Nick. So, Krampus and Saint Nicholas are said to arrive on the evening of December 5th, which is Krampus night. Children will leave boots on their doorsteps so that hopefully their good deed will cause the evil Krampus to pass them by. While St. Nicholas rewards nice children by leaving presents, Krampus beats those who are naughty with branches and sticks, as well as leaving a lump of coal in the boot. In some cases, he is said to eat the children or stuff them into his sack and take them straight to hell. Then on December 6th, St. Nicholas Day, children awaken to find their gifts or nurse their injuries. Either way, it depends entirely on their behavior for that year. And originally, Krampus was not just one entity, but a group or race of deities or monsters, if you will, that all worked for the same purpose around the winter solstice. Festivities involving Krampus include the, quote, Krampus Run. Now, in this activity, which often involves alcohol, people dressed as the creature parade through the streets, scaring spectators and sometimes chasing them. Now, beginning in the late 20th century, amid efforts to preserve cultural heritage, Krampus runs became increasingly popular in Austria and Germany. During this time, Krampus began to be celebrated internationally, and the monster's growing appeal was evidenced by numerous horror films. Some claimed that the expanding popularity of Krampus was a reaction to the commercialization of Christmas, which is what brought him to my attention, because Christmas is indeed way over commercialized. Krampus has now caught the attention of many other countries, including the United States. So a good way to think about it is that Krampus is the yin to Santa Claus's yang. Jeremy Sagers told the Smithsonian.com, quote, "You have the saint, you have the devil. It taps into a subconscious macabre desire that a lot of people have, that is, the opposite of the saccharine Christmas a lot of us grew up with," unquote. And as time has gone on, more attempts to eradicate the celebration of Krampus followed in 1934 at the hands of Austria's conservative Christian Social Party. But thankfully, none of it held, and Krampus emerged as a much feared and beloved holiday force. In a brief article that was published in 1958, Maurice Bruce wrote, quote, "There seems to be little doubt as to his true identity, for in no other form is the full regalia of the horned god of the witches so well preserved. The birch, apart from its phallic significance may have a connection with the initiation rites of certain witch covens, rites which entail binding as a form of mock death. The chains could have been introduced in a Christian attempt to, quote, bind the devil, but again, they could be a remnant of pagan initiation rites. The Krampus figure persists, and by the 17th century, Krampus had been incorporated into Christian winter celebrations by pairing Krampus with St. Nicholas. In the aftermath of the 1932 election in Austria, the Krampus tradition was prohibited by the Dollfuss regime under the Fatherland's Front and the Christian Social Party. In the 1950s, the government distributed pamphlets titled, quote, Krampus is an evil man, unquote, and then towards the end of the century, a popular resurgence of Krampus celebrations occurred and continues today, unquote. So the Krampus traditions are actually being revived in Bavaria as well as many European nations, along with a local artistic tradition of hand-carved wooden masks. Now, in 2019, there were reports of drunk and disorderly conduct by masked Krampuses in some Austrian towns. Naughty, naughty. And as described before, Krampus carries chains thought to symbolize the binding of the devil by the Christian church. He thrashes the chains for dramatic effect. The chains are sometimes accompanied with bells of varying sizes. The more pagan origins are the rutin, bundles of birch branches that Krampus carries and with which he occasionally swats children. Rutin may have had significance in pre-Christian pagan initiation rites. The birch branches are replaced with a whip in some representations. Sometimes Krampus appears with a sack or a basket strapped to his back, much like Santa Claus. This is to cart off the evil children so that he can drown them or eat them or transport them straight to hell. Now, it is customary to offer Krampus schnapps, which is a strong distilled fruit brandy. And while we all know that St. Nicholas eventually morphed into today's Santa Claus, Krampus's story has endured. Some want to move Krampus night of December 5th to Christmas Eve, but that hasn't taken root yet, thankfully. There were greeting cards actually created in the 1800s that, if you are familiar with Krampus, you might recognize that definitely portrayed him as basically the devil. He had one human foot, one hooved. He is seen with his pitchfork holding up a deceased child dripping from being drowned or pulling a maiden by her hair to hell. Krampus is still recognized and celebrated in these modern times, as they nearly always have in Germany and Austria, as well as other Swiss countries, but his story is spreading quickly across the globe. Now, whether he is a companion of his polar opposite Santa Claus or what anyone believes, he does give some of us that aren't as, shall I say, keen to the optimism and commercialism of Christmas, something a little more sinister to grab onto so that we may enjoy the holiday season just that bit more. Thanks for listening.